The gunshot echoed across the Montana plains like thunder, startling Violet Donovan from her daydreams as she scrubbed laundry on the washboard outside her family's modest homestead. Her heart leapt to her throat, recognizing the distinct sound of her brother's rifle, a distress signal they'd agreed upon years ago when they first settled in this wild territory in 1876. Daniel. Violet dropped the sodden shirt, not bothering to wipe her hands as she ran toward the barn, her long skirts catching on sagebrush. At 22, she'd learned that survival in these parts required quick thinking and quicker feet. The second shot confirmed her fears. Her older brother wouldn't waste precious ammunition unless something had gone terribly wrong. Their parents had passed during the harsh winter 2 years prior, leaving the siblings to manage the struggling ranch alone in a land where the law was still finding its footing. Reaching the barn, Violet grabbed the nearest bridle and threw it over her own mare's head. "Easy, Penny," she murmured, foregoing a saddle in her haste. She mounted swiftly and urged the horse forward, following the faint trail leading toward the western pasture where Daniel had gone to check on their small herd that morning. As Penny crested the hill, Violet's breath caught. In the shallow ravine below, she spotted Daniel's chestnut stallion, Rusty, lying on his side, one leg clearly broken. Daniel knelt beside his faithful mount, his rifle discarded nearby. Blood stained the animal's flank, but from this distance, Violet couldn't determine if it was from the injury or if Daniel had attempted to put the horse out of its misery and lost his nerve. She approached carefully, dismounting a few yards away. "Daniel, what happened?" Her brother looked up, his face ashen beneath his tan. "Rustlers," he said simply. "They spooked the herd. Rusty stepped in a prairie dog hole trying to cut them off." His voice cracked. "I can't do it, Vi. I can't shoot him." Violet understood. Rusty had been Daniel's companion since before they'd left Missouri. The stallion had pulled their wagon west when their draft horses had fallen ill, had outrun angry Sioux warriors during that terrifying first month, and had saved Daniel's life more than once when he'd gotten lost in snowstorms. "How many cattle did they take?" she asked, approaching the injured horse cautiously. "Most of them." "Maybe 15 head, left us 3. Daniel swallowed hard. "Without those cattle, we won't make it through winter." Violet knelt beside Rusty, examining the break. It was bad bone protruding through skin, but something in her refused to accept the inevitable. "We need to splint it. Maybe Dr. Wells could." "Doc's 3 days' ride, and you know it." Daniel stood, picking up his rifle again. "It's kindness now, Vi. Stand back." "No." Violet positioned herself between her brother and the horse. "I've seen worse mended. Remember old man Porter's mule, walked crooked but lived another 5 years. Rusty's too valuable, and he's family." Daniel's shoulders slumped. "Even if we could save him, we've lost everything else." "The cattle were our last hope. Then we'll get them back." Violet's voice hardened with determination. "But first, we save Rusty." Hours later, with Rusty's leg splinted using strips of her petticoat and branches from a nearby cottonwood, Violet set out alone despite Daniel's protests. She'd convinced him to stay with the injured stallion and the remaining cattle, armed with her father's old Navy Colt. Tracking was one skill she excelled at, having learned from an old Crow man who'd worked briefly for their father. The rustlers' trail was easy to follow. 15 cattle left clear tracks heading northwest. Violet suspected they were headed toward the notorious outlaw haven near the Montana-Wyoming border. If she rode through the night, she might catch them before they reached it. The prairie stretched endlessly around her as daylight faded. Penny's steady gait ate up the miles, but Violet knew she would need to rest the horse soon. Just as she was considering making camp, she spotted a flicker of light in the distance, a campfire. Approaching with caution, she dismounted and crept forward on foot until she could make out 4 men sitting around the fire, their voices carrying on the still evening air. Beyond them, she spotted her family's cattle, their brand visible even in the dim light. "Should fetch a good price in Deadwood," one man said, chuckling. "Easy pickings from that sorry excuse for a ranch." Violet's blood boiled, but she forced herself to think rationally. 4 armed men against 1 woman were impossible odds. She needed help or a better plan. As she backed away, a twig snapped beneath her boot. Instantly, the men fell silent. "Check that out," a gruff voice commanded. Violet ran for Penny, but in the darkness, she stumbled into a depression, twisting her ankle painfully. As she struggled to rise, rough hands seized her shoulders. "Well, well," said a bearded man, dragging her toward the camp. "Look what I found, boys." The other rustlers gathered around, their expressions ranging from amused to predatory. The largest man, clearly their leader, spat tobacco juice near her feet. "Donovan's sister," he observed. "Came to fetch her cattle, I reckon. Please," Violet said, hating the quiver in her voice but playing along. "Those cattle are all we have left. Our parents are dead, and save your sob story," the leader cut her off. "Folks die out here every day. Tie her up. We'll decide what to do with her in the morning." With her hands bound behind her back and her ankle throbbing, Violet was propped against a wagon wheel. The rustlers took turns keeping watch, but as the night deepened, 3 of them slept while the 4th nodded by the dying fire. Despair crept through her as she worked fruitlessly at her bonds. The cattle were just yards away, but she couldn't free herself, let alone drive them back. Worse, if she didn't return, Daniel would come looking for her, leaving Rusty alone and vulnerable. As dawn approached, Violet heard a soft sound behind her, a footstep too careful to belong to one of the rustlers. Her heart raced as a hand suddenly covered her mouth. "Don't scream," a man's voice whispered. "I'm going to cut you loose." The pressure of a knife blade slipped between her wrists, and the ropes fell away. Violet turned to see a stranger crouched beside her. Even in the pre-dawn light, she could make out piercing blue eyes beneath the brim of a dusty black hat. "Who?" she began, but he shook his head, pointing toward the sleeping rustlers. Questions later. "Can you ride?" She nodded, then winced as she tried to stand on her injured ankle. The stranger's arm went around her waist, supporting her. "Lean on me. My horse is behind those rocks." Together they crept away from the camp. When they reached a magnificent black gelding hidden in a cluster of boulders, the stranger helped her mount, then swung up behind her. "What about the cattle?" Violet whispered. "They're my brothers. We need them." The man hesitated, then nodded. "I'll come back for them. First, I need to get you somewhere safe." As they rode away, Violet glanced over her shoulder. "They'll follow us." "Let them try," he replied, patting what she now realized was a Winchester rifle in a saddle scabbard. They rode for nearly an hour, the stranger guiding his horse confidently through terrain that would have left Violet lost in minutes. Eventually, they reached a small cabin nestled against a rocky outcropping, almost invisible until they were upon it. "My line shack," he explained, dismounting and helping her down. "Nobody knows about this place except my foreman." Inside, the cabin was sparse but clean: a bunk, a table, 2 chairs, and a small stove. The stranger lit a lamp, and Violet finally got a good look at her rescuer. He was tall and broad-shouldered, with a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes were indeed the striking blue she'd glimpsed earlier, set in a face that spoke of both hardship and kindness. He wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but something about the quiet confidence in his movements drew her attention. "I'm Dillon Forrester," he said, removing his hat to reveal dark hair streaked with silver at the temples. "I own the Double F Ranch east of here." "Violet Donovan," she replied. My brother Daniel and I have a small spread near Cottonwood Creek. Dillon nodded. I know of it. Your father bought that land from Jeb Thomas about 5 years back. You knew my father, not well, met him at a cattle auction once. He gestured to a chair. Sit. Let me look at that ankle. Violet hesitated, aware of the impropriety, but the throbbing pain overrode her concerns. She sat, allowing him to gently remove her boot and examine her swollen ankle. Sprained, not broken, he pronounced. Still, you won't be chasing cattle anytime soon. I have to, Violet insisted. Those rustlers took almost everything we had. Without those cattle, my brother and I won't survive the winter, and his horse, Rusty, is injured. I promised to bring help. Dillon's eyes narrowed. How badly is the horse hurt? Broken leg. I splinted it, but... Most would have shot it, he observed. Violet met his gaze steadily. He's my brother's best friend. I couldn't give up on him. A ghost of a smile touched Dillon's lips. Where did you leave them? In the western pasture of our property, near the creek bed. Dillon wrapped her ankle efficiently with a strip of clean cloth. Rest here. I'll retrieve your cattle and check on your brother and his horse. I'm coming with you, Violet said firmly. With that ankle, it's my family, my responsibility. Dillon studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Stubborn. That'll serve you well out here. He moved to a trunk and pulled out a shirt, tossing it to her. Change into that. Your dress will only slow us down. Violet blushed. I can't wear men's clothing. You can if you want to help save your brother's horse, Dillon replied pragmatically. I'll wait outside. There's jerky in that sack if you're hungry. After he left, Violet hesitated only briefly before practicality won out. She changed into Dillon's shirt, which hung to mid-thigh, and kept her skirt on beneath it. The combination looked ridiculous, but would allow her to ride astride more easily. Outside, Dillon had saddled a second horse, a sturdy paint mare. He didn't comment on her makeshift outfit, simply helped her mount and handed her a canteen. The rustlers will be looking for both of us now, he warned. We'll need to be careful. As they rode, Violet's curiosity grew. Why did you help me? You don't even know me. Dillon was silent so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he said, I recognized their leader, man named Wade Bartlett. He and his gang rustled 40 of my cattle last spring, shot my youngest ranch hand when he tried to stop them. His voice hardened. The law did nothing. So this is about revenge, Justice, Dillon corrected. And maybe I don't like seeing someone fighting alone when the odds are stacked against them. They traveled swiftly, Dillon leading them on a circuitous route that kept them hidden from any potential pursuers. By mid-afternoon, they spotted the rustlers' camp in the distance, now abandoned. They've moved on with your cattle, Dillon observed, but they left tracks. We'll follow, but first, let's check on your brother. They reached the Donovan homestead by sunset. Daniel rushed from the house at their approach, rifle ready until he recognized his sister. Violet. Relief flooded his face, quickly replaced by confusion as he took in her strange attire and companion. Who's this? And what happened to your dress? Daniel, this is Dillon Forrester. He rescued me from the rustlers. Violet dismounted carefully, wincing as her ankle protested. How's Rusty? Daniel's expression softened. Still alive, thanks to your stubbornness. I got him into the barn somehow. He's drinking water at least. Dillon dismounted and extended his hand to Daniel. Your sister was trying to save your cattle. Brave woman you've got for family. Daniel shook the offered hand. Foolhardy more like, but yes, brave too. He glanced between them. You said rustlers. Did you get our cattle back? Not yet, Dillon said, but I intend to help you do just that. Inside the barn, Rusty lay on a thick bed of straw, his splinted legs stretched out awkwardly. The stallion nickered softly when he saw Violet. Dillon knelt beside the horse, examining the break with expert hands. "You did a good job with this splint," he told Violet, "but he needs proper treatment. I know a man lives about 10 miles from my ranch, best with horses I've ever seen. If we can get Rusty to him, he might save the leg." "How would we move him?" Daniel asked skeptically. "I've got a wagon with a special sling for injured horses. Lost enough good mounts to know the value of such things." Dillon stood. "I'll bring it tomorrow. For now, let's discuss those rustlers." Over a simple meal of beans and corn bread in the Donovan's kitchen, Dillon outlined his plan. "Bartlett's gang is likely headed for Deadwood. They'll have to cross Miller's Pass to get there quickest. If we can get ahead of them, set up an ambush." 3 against 4, Daniel mused. "Better odds than my sister had alone." "We can't just kill them," Violet protested. "No," Dillon agreed. "But we can persuade them that keeping your cattle isn't worth the trouble. I've got 6 ranch hands who'd be happy to help make that point." 6 more men? Daniel's eyebrows rose. "That's generous help for strangers." Dillon's gaze flicked to Violet. "Like I said, I've had run-ins with Bartlett before. This isn't just about your cattle." That night, Violet lay awake long after Daniel had fallen asleep in their parents' old room. She'd given Dillon their only spare bed, her brother's, while she took her usual small room off the kitchen. Her ankle throbbed, but it was thoughts of their mysterious helper that kept sleep at bay. Why would a successful rancher risk himself for them? The explanation about Bartlett rang true, but she sensed there was more to it. The way he'd looked at her sometimes, with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. A soft knock at her door startled her from her thoughts. "Violet," Dillon's voice was low. "I saw your light. May I speak with you?" She hesitated, acutely aware of her nightgown and loose hair. "One moment." She grabbed a shawl, wrapping it around her shoulders before opening the door a crack. "Is something wrong?" Dillon stood in the hallway, still fully dressed. "I couldn't sleep. Thought you might be awake too." He hesitated. "I need to tell you something about why I was out there when I found you." She opened the door wider, curiosity overcoming propriety. "Come in. But leave the door open." He entered, keeping a respectful distance. "I've been tracking Bartlett for weeks. When I saw him heading towards small ranches in this area, I followed. I was watching their camp when you arrived." "So you didn't just happen upon me by chance," Violet said slowly. "No, I saw you get captured." His expression darkened. "I was going to intervene immediately, but more of Bartlett's men showed up. I had to wait until they were asleep when the odds were better." "Why tell me this now?" Dillon ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that made him seem suddenly younger, less sure. "Because I don't want any misunderstandings between us. Your brother's right to be suspicious of my help. Most men out here don't do something for nothing." "And what do you want?" Violet asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Nothing you're not willing to give." His blue eyes held hers. "But I've been alone a long time, Miss Donovan. Meeting someone who would risk herself to save a horse and face down rustlers for her family, that's rare. That's someone worth knowing better." Heat rushed to Violet's cheeks. "Mr. Forrester, Dillon," he corrected gently. "Dillon," she amended. "I appreciate your honesty and your help, but until my brother's horse and our cattle are safe, that has to be my only concern." He nodded, a smile touching his lips. "Of course, I just wanted you to know where I stand." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Your brother would have shot that horse, wouldn't he, if you hadn't stopped him?" "Yes," Violet admitted. "He would have seen it as a mercy." "And you saw it differently." "I saw a chance. Sometimes that's all you need." She met his gaze steadily. "A chance and the courage to take it." Something flickered in Dillon's eyes, admiration, perhaps, or understanding. "Rest well, Violet. We've got a long day ahead tomorrow." After he left, Violet found sleep even more elusive than before. The next morning, Dillon rode out at dawn, promising to return with his men and the specialized wagon for Rusty. Daniel watched him go with a thoughtful expression. "You trust him?" he asked Violet as they tended to the injured stallion. "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Do you?" Daniel shrugged. "He seems decent enough, but men like that wealthy ranchers, they usually want something." "Maybe he just wants to see justice done," Violet suggested, avoiding her brother's eyes. "Maybe." Daniel scratched Rusty's ears. "Or maybe he's sweet on my stubborn sister." Violet nearly dropped the water bucket she was carrying. "Don't be ridiculous, he barely knows me." "Some things don't take long to recognize." Daniel's voice softened. "Pa knew he'd marry Ma the first day he met her, remember? Said it was like finding something he didn't know he'd lost." "This is different," Violet insisted, though her heartbeat quickened at the memory of Dillon's intense gaze the night before. True to his word, Dillon returned by mid-afternoon with 6 hard-looking cowboys and a wagon specially fitted with a sling contraption. The ranch hands efficiently but gently loaded Rusty into the conveyance, the horse surprisingly calm despite his pain. "He's a smart one," observed a weathered cowboy named Tom. "Knows we're trying to help." With Rusty secured, they discussed strategy for intercepting the rustlers. The plan was simple but effective. Half the men would drive the wagon with Rusty toward Dillon's ranch and the horse doctor, while Dillon, Daniel, Violet, and 3 cowboys would cut across country to head off Bartlett's gang at Miller's Pass. "I should go with Rusty," Daniel protested. "He knows me." "He knows your sister too," Dillon pointed out. "And I need you with us. You know your cattle, can identify them for certain." Daniel reluctantly agreed, and they split up, promising to rendezvous at the Double F Ranch within 2 days. As they rode toward Miller's Pass, Violet found herself alongside Dillon, slightly separated from the others. "You didn't mention I'd be coming along when we made plans last night," she observed. Dillon glanced at her, one eyebrow raised. "Would you have stayed behind if I tried to make you?" "No, that's what I thought." A smile played at the corners of his mouth. "Besides, I've seen how you handle yourself. You're an asset, not a liability." The compliment warmed her more than it should have. "Tell me about your ranch," she said, changing the subject. "You mentioned it's east of here." For the next hour, Dillon described the Double F 5,000 acres of prime grazing land, 300 head of cattle, a main house he'd built himself after making his fortune in the Colorado silver mines. "It sounds wonderful," Violet said, a touch of wistfulness in her voice. "Our little spread must seem pitiful by comparison." "Not at all," Dillon replied seriously. "You've done remarkably well considering. Your parents would be proud." "Sometimes I wonder if we should sell," Violet admitted. "Start fresh somewhere else. It's been so hard since they died." "Is that what you want?" She considered the question honestly. "No, it's our home. I just wish it didn't feel like we were constantly fighting a losing battle." Dillon was quiet for a moment. "Sometimes the right partner makes all the difference in a fight." Before Violet could respond to this loaded statement, one of the cowboys signaled from ahead. They'd spotted dust on the trail below, likely Bartlett's gang with the stolen cattle. They positioned themselves strategically along the narrow pass, Daniel and 2 cowboys on one side, Dillon, Violet, and the 3rd cowboy on the opposite ridge. As the rustlers approached, driving the cattle before them, Dillon gave a signal. Rifle shots rang out, strategically placed to kick up dirt around the rustlers without hitting them. The startled men drew their weapons, looking frantically for the source of the attack. "That's far enough, Bartlett," Dillon called, his voice echoing off the rock walls. The lead rustler reined his horse, squinting up at the ridges. "Forrester, this ain't your business." "You made it my business when you started rustling in my territory," Dillon replied. "We've got you surrounded. 8 guns against your 4. Those cattle belong to the Donovans, and you're going to turn them loose right now. Bartlett spat. Like hell we will. In response, another volley of shots kicked up dust inches from the rustlers' horses, making the animals rear and whinny in panic. Next round won't miss, Dillon warned. Your choice, Bartlett. Leave the cattle and ride away, or don't ride away at all. For a tense moment, Violet thought the rustlers would fight. Then Bartlett cursed viciously and motioned to his men. This ain't over, Forrester, he shouted, before they wheeled their horses and galloped away, leaving the cattle milling in confusion. Daniel whooped in triumph, and the cowboys converged to begin gathering the scattered herd. As Violet started to climb down from her position, loose rocks gave way beneath her injured ankle. She cried out, slipping down the steep incline. Strong arms caught her before she tumbled far. Dillon pulled her against his chest, steadying them both on the narrow ledge. "Are you all right?" he asked, his face inches from hers. Violet nodded, too breathless to speak. Whether from the fall or his proximity, she couldn't say. Dillon didn't release her immediately. "You tried to save your brother's horse," he said softly. "He'd thank you, but you need saving too." "I'm not some damsel requiring rescue," Violet protested, even as she remained in his arms. "No," Dillon agreed, a smile touching his lips. "You're the brave woman who rescued herself. I'm just offering a steadying hand when the ground gets rough." Something in his words, the recognition of her strength rather than her weakness, touched Violet deeply. Without thinking, she leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. Dillon responded instantly, one hand sliding into her hair as he deepened the kiss. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "I shouldn't have done that," Violet whispered, though she felt no regret. "I'm glad you did," Dillon replied. "I've wanted to do that since I first saw you standing up to those rustlers." Daniel's voice from below broke the moment. "Violet, you all right up there?" "Fine," she called back, reluctantly stepping away from Dillon. "Just lost my footing. We're coming down." The journey back to the Donovan ranch was filled with triumphant spirits as they drove the recovered cattle ahead of them. Daniel rode alongside Violet, occasionally glancing between her and Dillon with knowing eyes but saying nothing. At the homestead, they found a message waiting. Rusty had been safely delivered to the horse doctor, who believed the stallion would recover, though he might always have a slight limp. "See," Violet told her brother, "worth saving after all." As the cowboys made camp for the night, Dillon pulled Violet aside. "Come to the Double F with me tomorrow," he said without preamble. "See the place, meet my people." "I can't just leave Daniel, bring him too. He'll want to check on Rusty anyway." Dillon took her hand. "Violet, I know this is sudden. We've known each other barely 2 days. But out here, life doesn't always give you the luxury of time." "What exactly are you asking, Mr. Forrester?" Violet's heart raced despite her attempt at formality. "I'm asking for a chance." "The same chance you gave that broken horse." His blue eyes were earnest. "I've been alone too long. Built a home with no one to share it. Then I found you brave and stubborn and beautiful, and suddenly that empty house seemed like the saddest thing in the world." Violet swallowed hard. "You don't know me. I know enough. I know you put family first. I know you see possibility where others see only endings. I know you kiss like you do everything else with your whole heart." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "The rest we can learn together, if you're willing." Later, Violet would wonder at her own boldness. Perhaps it was the wild spirit of the frontier that had finally worked its way into her bones, or perhaps it was simply recognizing, as her father had with her mother, something she hadn't known she'd lost. "Yes," she said simply. "I'm willing." The journey to the Double F the next day revealed a property even more impressive than Dillon had described, a sprawling main house built of solid timber. Bunkhouses for the ranch hands, a massive barn, and pastures stretching as far as the eye could see. In the barn, they found Rusty comfortably installed in a large stall, his leg properly splinted by the horse doctor, who had indeed confirmed that the stallion would recover. "You were right," Daniel told his sister, scratching Rusty's ears. "Some things are worth saving, even when they seem broken beyond repair." His gaze drifted meaningfully to where Dillon stood at the barn doors, watching Violet with unmistakable affection. Over the next month, Violet and Daniel made the journey to the Double F regularly. Violet found herself increasingly drawn to both Dillon and his vision for the land. He spoke of breeding programs to improve cattle stock, irrigation systems to make the dry seasons less devastating, and community efforts to reduce the rustling that plagued small ranchers. "You could be part of this," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in gold and crimson. "You and Daniel both. The Donovan land adjoins mine to the west. Together, we could build something that would last generations." "Are you proposing a business arrangement, Mr. Forrester?" Violet teased, though her pulse quickened. Dillon took her hand, his expression serious. "I'm proposing whatever you're ready to accept, a business partnership, a courtship, marriage, all of it eventually." He smiled slightly. "I'm a patient man, Violet. I've waited a long time to find someone worth waiting for." 6 months later, on a crisp autumn day, Violet Donovan became Violet Forrester in a ceremony attended by Daniel, the Double F ranch hands, and half the county. Rusty, now walking with only a slight hitch in his gait, carried Daniel to the celebration. The Donovan property was incorporated into the Double F, with Daniel taking on the role of managing that section of the expanded ranch. The small homestead where Violet and Daniel had struggled alone was transformed into a comfortable home for Daniel, who swore he preferred bachelor living. As for Violet and Dillon, they built their life together in the main house, adding a wing the following year when their first child was on the way. The nursery window overlooked the pasture where Rusty, now retired from working duties, grazed contentedly alongside Penny. 5 years after that fateful day when Violet had defied conventional wisdom to save her brother's horse, the Double F had become one of the most successful ranches in the territory. More importantly, it had become a true home filled with the laughter of 2 children, the comfort of family gatherings, and the enduring love of a couple who had recognized in each other the rare combination of strength and tenderness needed to thrive in the untamed West. On their anniversary each year, Dillon would always tell the same story to their increasingly extended family of a stubborn woman who refused to give up on a broken horse, and a lonely rancher who discovered that sometimes the most precious things in life come from taking a chance on someone who needs saving just as much as you do. And Violet, listening to her husband's deep voice recount their beginning, would smile and remember that moment on the ridge when she had realized that being strong enough to save others and wise enough to accept help when needed weren't contradictions at all, but the very foundation of the love that had built their shared life in this wild, beautiful land.